Hello and welcome to Claw's YouTube channel. Today is one of the final episodes of military history where we will try to give out to our aspirants a model sample paper on military history. Bulk of the questions papers uh, will automatically come on a similar line. So this is one sample paper which we will leave it on the website on the YouTube channel. The participants can freeze it and see the type of questions which have been asked in each section, and then go ahead and practice answering. If they approach the clause, we will be able to give them more such sample papers so that they can practice, because the entrance exam is still quite some time away, so they have enough time to actually revise their content. But that notwithstanding, I think Brigadier Speaks and Clause combined together have enough material for the DSSC aspirants to actually have a revision done of military history. But more than that, I would like to also inform the DSSC aspirants that we are now making a 24-hour revision notes so that they can refer to it just before the or night before they go for the exam, because there you don't have much time, so you can quickly go over your answers. So with that brief little discussion, let's dive into today's question sample question paper and the technique to answer it. We will tackle from each section one or two questions, and finally, we will also have a question being tackled on the personality study, which is on Janang Yap. With that, Bhatia, over to you, who has been our regular guest on this particular military history channel. Over to you, Bhatia.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, like you had said, when we study a military history campaign, it's extremely useful to see what type of questions can be framed, because most of the time you read a history book like a story book, so you are not able to find the nuances. More importantly, sir, the recommended book, the target audience in this case was totally different. So it is not written in those many details. The author had presumed that the readers are aware of the basics, but some of our DSSC aspirants who have not had exposure to this in the past will find it difficult to find. Sir, just one second. Will find it difficult to find out what type of questions can be asked. So with this, we move to the type of questions. Now, these are the 100-mark questions, sir, which I thought we should answer, sir. The
Okay.
Chinese government announced withdrawal of PLA from Vietnam immediately after the Battle of Long Son. Give out the Chinese build-up for the battle and weigh the battle progress till Long Son was captured. This particular question actually is not a thinker type, but it demands the aspirants to remember basic facts about how the war was fought, how the buildup was done, what was the force level. As military commanders, own force level and enemy force level is one of the most important things which should be in mind of every military commander whosoever is involved, either at the tactical level, operational level, or at strategic level. So that is why it is very important to assess that what is in front of me. General Japs, a very, very popular military and later political leader who was their defense minister at the time of Sino-Vietnam War, and he had fought both first and the second Indochina War. He is often described as developed and practiced. He often practiced guerrilla warfare. So, what are the characteristics of this guerrilla warfare and the tactics frequently employed by him? In this, I will suggest, sir, our notes of clause. I found a very interesting comparison between the guerrilla warfare that was practiced by the Chinese, that is basically
Yeah.
Mao,
Yeah.
and how Jap evolved that against the USA, and this he used against the Chinese. Now, Chinese were actually caught by surprise. The type of like simple use of punjis. The Chinese were not anticipating that this sort of obstacle will be there. The tunnel warfare, the trenches, and they were all coordinated, very well coordinated, and this was further, refined by Jal Jab. So, what are the next question could be? What are the noteworthy aspect of Deng's decision making? Now, Deng was also a very, very important partner or leader in this war. What he did and what he thought, it emerged after he had taken few decisions. Now there are a lot of military historians who are actually trying to make out that what he meant by his utterings alone and trying to correlate it with his action. So these are, I think, 100-mark questions, and something similar can appear. Then the 30 marks question could be now 100-mark question on strategy and objective, and 30-mark question, what is the difference, sir? Today, I intend covering both, sir. That in case on the same subject, if you get 100 marks, what all you should cover, and if similar thing happens in a 30 marks, then what are the essentials which you must cover to get these 30 marks? Then lesson learned, of course, in any military campaign, we are always looking for lesson learned, whichever campaign we study. Then PLA's experience in 1979 war, incidentally, so that was the last war that PLA fought. After 1979, they are not involved in any war. But it does provide insights into how Chinese leaders approach matters of war and strategy, discuss the same. Now, students would do well here to add one or few sentences about how PLA has evolved from 1979. Are those lessons still relevant or they are not relevant? And maybe we can draw some lessons for our own armed forces also, because China, of course, remains a common adversary for what they did in Vietnam, and it is imperative on a human mind that they tend to repeat, like they say, history repeats. There is a model formula for everything that has happened or something similar. So we should not be surprised if they take a similar decision if they have to take it today. However, the implementation and the detailed execution may be different. Then 10 marks, terrain could be asked for 10 marks. So describe the terrain and its effect on both the attacker, that is the PLA, and the defender, that is the Vietnamese. 79 Sino-Vietnam War did not produce significant international consequences for China, you explain. In fact, there are two views to that. Though it is only 10 marks, if the similar question is for 30 or maybe 100 marks, then you need to give in detail that what some military historians say that no, China did achieve strategically what they wanted to achieve, though the criticism could be that the casualties were much more than what they achieved. Next question could be said that Chinese started the Sino-Vietnam War by misjudgment. Was there a misjudgment? You know, elaborate on that. Then, of course, Jab's first counteroffensive against the French. What did he learn? Now, this against French was the first Indo-China war. Throughout his military career, the base of Jab's strategy was borrowed from Chinese so-called three-stage strategy. What is it? So this we will answer today. This question I found it very interesting, and the way it was explained. In fact, it was new for me also, the way Claus notes explained it. Then Jap formulated the Viet Minh strategy for warfare. This strategy used as its pillar the theory of Do Tran, that is struggle. Explain this. And what were the reasons for failure of Red River campaign of Jap in 1951? So this could be 10 marks question. I will suggest to the DSSC aspirants, please pay attention. We're going to answer a 100-mark question, 30 marks question, and 10 marks question. So see the difference, how the answer needs to be approached. What are the important aspects that need to be covered? First question is, Chinese government announced withdrawal of PLA immediately after Battle of Longson. Give out the Chinese buildup for the battle and the way battle progressed till Longson was captured. Please remember, Longson was captured in phase two. So he is expecting you to answer the preparations as well as phase one in brief and Longson. The entire, in fact, these are the major battles which happened during 1979. So
So,
he's, if for
so,
100 bucks, he's quickly asking everything, sir.
here I would like to add kind of a note to our listeners and audience, especially those who are appearing for the staff college, is that this is kind of a sum nichode of the entire Vietnam campaign, right?
Correct.
So the challenge for you is not in terms of a thinker question, but the challenge for you is how to abridge it in that given space, the entire campaign, so that necessary lessons can be easily derived from your description, right? So that is very important. So I would recommend to all of you how I used to prepare for such long questions was, try to remember the images, because if you remember the images, then it is very easy to capture a lot of information in the image itself and give brief explanation and carry on forward. Okay, go ahead.
So, what was the path to the war? First of all, Hanoi had signed a peace and friendship treaty with Laos. We must remember that Southeast Asia was a contested area at that time. On one hand, China used to think that its Southeast Asia is its own backyard, and on the other hand, Vietnam, because having fought two at that time superpower and defeating, that is U.S. Army, the Vietnamese were very exuberant, and they actually thought that after Stalin, it is Vietnamese communists who should actually rule in or have influence in Southeast Asia. Now, this was not acceptable to China. Hanoi moved fast and they had a treaty with Laos which permitted Vietnamese troops on the Laotian territory. Now, Cambodia was an ally of China with Pol Pot being the leader. With Vietnamese troops sitting in Laos, the land route between China and Cambodia was blocked. So this was not liked by the Chinese because they could not provide the necessary aid to their ally in Cambodia. The apparent cause of border dispute was 1976. There was a dispute. Actually, if you look at it, the land border dispute, serious dispute was only about 60 odd kilometers, which is not a very big dispute. But it was taken as an alibi. But the hidden agenda was that Vietnamese had entered Cambodia. So that is why they wanted to, by opening this front against Vietnam, the PLA wanted to help its ally so that pressure on Khmer Rouge is reduced. Simultaneously, Soviet Union and China's relations had were going back since late 60s. So Soviet Union had a friendship or sort of military treaty with Vietnam. So this was not liked by China. So they wanted to tell Soviet Union that this is our area, you need not get into this area. So this was all the geopolitical calculations which PLA had done. They wanted to create a safe, reliable environment for its for modernizations. Now, firstly, cultural revolution had gone through. The civil society in China was going through a lot of trouble. When Deng came, he gave a call for modernization. He said that there should be a modernization in agriculture, in industries, in national defense, and in science and technology. He knew that for these four modernizations to happen, he needs a very stable sort of situation within the country. Now, stability cannot be presumed till such time your borders are secure. So he wanted to make sure that from south, the threat of Vietnam supported by Soviet Union is eliminated. In this way, he also there was a possibility of two front war from north, as you see in the map. That time it was USSR, and the Central Asian republics were also part of USSR. So there was a possibility of Soviet Union launching an offensive from north and Vietnam launching an offensive from south. In fact, when China attacked Vietnam, they had created two fronts. One was the northern front and the southern front because they were expecting Soviet intervention from north. Now, Vietnam was boasting of being world's third strongest military power. As I say, they were very exuberant after defeating USA or something what USA many years later did in Afghanistan. They did the similar thing in Vietnam in 1975. One fine day, they just packed and left. So Vietnamese army and Vietnamese leaders were very confident, which China as a big brother did not like. So he wanted to teach a lesson to Vietnam. Now, what was Chinese strategy objective and how did they prepare? Political objective was to teach Vietnam a lesson or an informal thing. You can say that it was an act of revenge. Now, this political aim was converted into a military aim because military aim has to be specific, whereas political aim can be bit vague. So, the military aim in this case was to capture or threaten Hanoi, the most industrialized, most populated, politically important city. The limited objective they decided, they said that war should not go beyond bilateral border conflict. The reason for this was that they wanted to quickly finish the war so that Soviet Union does not get a chance to help Vietnam. Many years later, when they came with the war zone concept, there was a concept called QBQR, where they said quick battle, quick resolution. So they always emphasize that whatever they have to do it at the earliest so that the enemy is not able to recover and he is not able to get help from anybody. Now, even in Taiwan's case, they ideally they would like to go in quickly before USA or any other country can react and intervene. They have always used butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Aim was now operationally they had decided that we will strike the vital areas of enemy and avoid its strong points. Tactically overwhelming force and firepower. They wanted to go deep with highest possible speed and strike into the heart of enemy. So this is how we can divide it into strategy, what the objective was, what the preparations were made. What was the orbat? Now, this slide we have compiled. There were two wings. I had already mentioned there were two fronts. Northern front consisted of Shenyang, Beijing, Jinan, Lanzhou, and Xinjiang military region. This front was defending China from north for perceived attack from Soviet Union. Then there was a southern front, which was to go for offensive inside the Vietnam. Southern front was further divided into eastern wing, which was based on Guangzhou military region, which is in the east of North Vietnam, and the western wing, which was based on Kunming military region, which is to the west of. We'll see it on map also. Then from Wuhan military region, that is up north, there were armies which were earmarked as reserve. They were all launched into battle after the phase one, that is its own organic units of Guangzhou and Kunming military region. After they were committed, the reserves were launched. As far as Vietnamese army is concerned, Vietnamese had a total strength of 6 lakh PLA regular troops, out of which they had invaded Vietnam, where approximately 150,000 to 200,000 troops were located in Cambodia. 100,000 in Laos. I've already mentioned about it. They had a treaty where Laos had permitted them to keep troops inside Laos. 100,000 were in South Vietnam. Though in 79 it was one country, North and South had merged. There was, but 75 USA had just left, so they could not afford to pick up these troops and bring them to North Vietnam against the PLA. So in North, actually just about 200,000 to 250,000, that is, those 2 lakhs to 2.5 lakhs were available. Uh, so what did they do? They employed militia. The local people who knew the terrain very well, including a number of women, all men from 18 to 45 and all women from the age of 18 to 35 were eligible for conscription. And the locals came willingly to serve. So that was the force which the Chinese military planner had not taken into account. This is the terrain map of Vietnam. Along the Clear River was the distinction between the entire northern area was divided into two military regions. One was military region 1 on the east, and to the west was military region 2. Talking about northeast, that is military region 1, 3 Div was located at Langsong, 338 division was located at Hot Kai, Quing Ning, 242 was responsible for coastal defense. At Hafang, this 325 division was meant for security of Hanoi. It was placed here because the distance was the least from PLA. In addition, the local forces that I spoke about in Kaobong province, 567 Infantry Regiment, 1 RT, 1 Air Defense, Longson, 123 Infantry Regiment, 199 Infantry Regiment, and 7 Infantry Battalion, and Kung Ni, which is on the coastal along the Gulf of Tonkin, 43 Infantry Regiment, 244 Infantry Regiment, supported by RT and Air Defense. There were also independent 5 infantry battalions. Now, again, I will emphasize these were local forces who knew the terrain very well, who were born and brought up son of the soil. So they carried out, and they were trained in guerrilla warfare. So they carried out a lot of attrition against the PLA who were advancing. Similarly, second military region in general area of Lokai and Hoi Kai, 345 division of Vietnam was located. In Phong Tho, Sapa, and Lao Chau, 316 Vietnamese division, and in Son La was 326. Pay attention along the Red River that is marked. One is a valley which touches straight away goes to Hanoi. There is railways, there is a road. Incidentally, Red River inland water transport can be carried out along the Red River. So you can say that surface transport, all three forms of surface transport was available. Now, what was the logic of putting the division in Lao Chau and Son La was this is the line that you see coming from north is actually Dah River Valley, which joins Red River Valley. So, virtually, if they are able to capture these areas through this valley, they could have easily reached Hanoi without any interference.
Here,
What
here I would like, here I would just go back to the. Here I would
sir,
like to tell the aspirants that these 3 4 images which have been shown to you, please form a picture in your mind. That will straight away give you the answer to this particular question, right? So if you remember this as an image, produce it, like a virtual image in front of you and start writing, you will not go wrong. What you need to understand about images are major things, landmarks. So first would be landmarks of communications, second would be landmarks of features, hills, valleys, right? So when you know that you're talking about Red River, it has rail also, it has road also. The three important places around it are Sonla. So you just straight away put these two, three major landmarks and the major features. Your map is complete, right? Laosai, Sapa, Pongto, Sonla, Laicho. So these three, four words, three, four places you must remember. Thereafter, even if you go wrong in numbers, don't bother about
Correct.
345 division. Just you should know that there were three divisions which are deployed: one to the north of the Red River and two to the south of the Red River. That is how you remember these maps, and then you will realize that it's easy for you to answer the question. uh, Go ahead further. I thought let me also
Yeah,
tell the
absolutely.
aspirants as to how to actually remember all these things. On the face of it, you get overly concerned with numbers. Remember the numbers of the formation. Three divisions were fighting against how many of the Vietnamese militia, not a proper, well organized forces which were fighting initially in the initial phases. So you will realize that it's easier for you to put the battle across in a proper manner. Okay, sorry.
In fact, sir, what you said very rightly, sir. North Vietnam, the area of operation was so small that I would support your statement that students, whenever they get a chance, they should just pick up a piece of paper and pen and draw the map,
Yeah,
because there's hardly anything in this map, and try and locate these. The problem I understand is that in the book the maps are not very clear, but taking help from Google Image and reading other documents and other books, so we have found out these places and put it on the map, and so it becomes very easy for the students to remember.
yeah,
So now this is another image set that I have created, where built up to the military campaign. What was the initial action and what was the fallout? There were border clashes following Kampuchean invasion when the Vietnam army entered Cambodia in late 78. PLA started amassing nearer the border. So it was first indication that something's going to happen. There were provocations along the border, civilian and military casualties from both sides. There were actual firing that were going on. Now I'm talking about still 1978, and the war started on 16th of February 1979. There was a border agreement of 1957. In late 78, China abrogated that border agreement. Yet another indication that they are ready, they are going in for a conflict. Two additional armies, eight were already existing. Two additional armies were inducted along the borders, one each in Guangzhou military region and one in Kunming military region, were in place somewhere around September, October 1978. So eight were already existing, two additional come, that makes it 10. Now, what was happening in Vietnam? Vietnam was heavily committed in military operations in Cambodia with about 100,000 troops, together with armor. The border region was defended by up to 1 lakh regional forces, troops, and irregulars, including ill trained militia. It was very surprising that Vietnam did not take these built up as a sort of warning. They thought that the Chinese are still just threatening us. Why did Vietnam think so? Because China itself was going through very difficult times, because cultural revolution had just finished. Three most prominent leaders, including Mao, Chao En-lai, and Bokai, had died in late 78. Deng's own position was not very strong within the PLA. So Vietnamese thought that probably the PLA is just making noise, nothing of that sort. They are not going to attack. 16th February attack takes, but 15th of February 1979, the Sino-Soviet Treaty of Friendship and Alliance in 50s, which they had carried out, the Chinese unilaterally terminated that treaty. And Deng declared that China is going to conduct limited attack on Vietnam. So this is how the build-up to the 1979 military campaign was. So, like you said, we have put it very sequentially. All the extra chaff thing has been removed, and one action has led to another. Sequentially, if our students understand this, they will remember it.
Also, I would like to add here that based on the description which Brigadier Bhatia is giving, try to cull out the lessons learned, because this is a descriptive question, but a question may come up where they are asking you what the Chinese did in terms of achieving surprise deception, where the Vietnamese failed, which we will cover later. But even for while practicing this question, answering this question, you should realize. So you'll find here that the Chinese achieved a strategic surprise. Why? Because given these geopolitical events which were taking place and internal events of China, where Mao had passed away, Deng had come in, Deng had projected an image of reforms, etc., etc. A war being undertaken by Deng was considered that most unlikely thing.
Yeah.
So it was all considered mostly as though it's posturing, and essentially he wants to keep the borders quiet. So therefore, there is no internal upheaval as far as China is concerned. But he proved it wrong by actually going in for the war. So this
That,
is where
that's how you achieve surprised.
yeah, that is called strategic surprise. So this is a very
Absolutely.
important lesson from this particular build-up to the military campaign is concerned. Don't read it. Don't read military operations simply on the face value. Try to analyze what was happening, what was taking place in the minds of the Chinese, because this will help us in future when you become commanders as to how to read what the Chinese are doing and what could be the likely action in the future. Okay.
The next question could be, sir, what are the noteworthy aspects of Deng's decision making for the 1979 offensive against Vietnam? So I'll very quickly cover this.
Yeah.
Now, Deng was a rationale. He made decision of war and peace on foreign policy implications. Initially, he covered himself. He went to Southeast Asia. He went to USA. That was a very important indication. A communist country who Mao was an ardent follower of communist country, and Deng decides to go to USA. He probably went there and promised that he will be US ally for and help US against the Soviet Union during the Cold War.
You must also remember that when you are studying military history, try try to connect the current affairs of that time. Henry Kissinger had started his pro-China movement for US.
Yes.
There was a makeup of relationship between China and US, United States of America, and then used this opportunity of US trying to cozy up with China to serve its own end of saying that okay, we will attack Vietnam, don't come in the way. It will indirectly help you further marginalize USSR. So this is called statecraft, and this is called again strategic approach to war before you actually enter into the war.
So Deng, he was aware that PLA is not in a good state because Cultural Revolution had just gone, and Mao had used PLA to enforce his ideas on the population, Chinese population. They had not fought a war. 1962 was the last war, but after that, when the Cultural Revolution, the PLA standards had actually deteriorated. So he also wanted to test that what is the status of military, that is PLA. Now Vietnamese had made allies with Laos. Vietnam had made ally with Soviet. So by launching this limited attack, Deng also tested the how strong is these allies and how can they. Deng also made the correct assessment, sir, that a short war will neither cause very great loss or great victory. But Soviets, a message will be given that their interference is not acceptable. had some preconceived ideas about capabilities of Vietnam. In fact, they were thinking that first phase will be over in 48 hours, and they'll straight away march to Long Sam, and they will threaten Hanoi, and then withdrawal was always thought of, but they took more than 1 week to reduce the frontline defenses itself, despite pounding them with heavy artillery. But it is to the credit of Deng that these setbacks, they did not lead to mission creep, or, it did not expand the limited war to protracted conflict or occupation. Now, Deng had studied US involvement in Vietnam, and he knew that in protracted warfare, the Vietnamese guerrilla war, the type of terrain and the type of environment which exists in Vietnam, PLA, if US was no match with so much of technology, PLA had no chance. So he had thought of it that let's go and limited in time and space a war, a message is sent not only to Vietnam, it was sent to Southeast Asia, it was sent to other nations also, that when China decides it, and it is in his favor, he does not stay away from taking a decision and implementing it. So this was the major lesson that he was able to. Now we come to a 30-mark question of what detailed thing we had done. Now, how a 30-mark question needs to be answered. Again, strategy, objective, and preparation for attack on Vietnam. Here, I had tried to put it in a slightly different form. That what was China's prime motive for attacking Vietnam? First was what I have given in the middle: check Vietnamese ambition and aggression in Southeast Asia. At the same time, expose Soviet weakness that they cannot reach in time and space, and then eliminate threat to Chinese national security. That is the attack, two front attack that Chinese were scared of from North Soviet Union and South Vietnam. And political aim, I have spoken about in detail, was to teach Vietnam a lesson. But let's ask the question to a planner: to what extent the objective of teaching Vietnam lesson could be achieved or measured? Conventionally, PLA always is in a hurry. He says that annihilate the enemy. Vital forces of enemy needs to be eliminated with overwhelming superior force. 3,20,000 troops were just collected there for this attack. And during the conduct, they chose the vital parts of defense and did not attack the strong point. There was overwhelming force and firepower. They moved very quickly, and most importantly, they wanted to cut the enemy defenses into pieces. That is, no reinforcement permitted, no withdrawal from the post or locality which the PLA has attacked. If you study the Battle of Lokai, Cao Bang, or Dongdang, or Longson, the first thing they've done is they have carried out envelope movement, and they have gone and established roadblock along the highways. Though it is not a correct term to use here, it is more applicable on the nodal point concept. It was routes of ingress and egress were just blocked. And then the locality was tackled by initially pounding it with a lot of explosive, followed by infantry in human wave technique. One after the other, the waves kept on coming.
So you will realize one thing about the Chinese tactics was that from 1962 to 1979, they had not changed their methodology of attack,
Yeah,
and that was one of the reasons of their losses on the ground in a conventional battle even at in 1979. So this is one major important lesson, that the Chinese had not evolved themselves
yeah.
to the changing nature of warfare. which was in those times, if you realize, more and more movements were taking place where
Yes,
guerrilla
yes.
warfare was becoming common. In the West, it was Guevara,
Correct.
who had become a guerrilla consultant. He used to move from Europe to Africa to America, consulting people how to start a guerrilla war. So, and the Chinese missed the boat somewhere there. Okay.
Two stages. First stage, that is phase one, two-pronged offensive, Kaobong and Laocoa were addressed. As I said, encircle defenders and destroy, and simultaneously attack on Dongdong to confuse Hanoi about the war objective. And the second phase was exclusively Guangzhou military region. In that, from Guangxi, which was the assembly area, Longson was addressed, and in northwest, one Vietnam division at Sapa was also addressed at the same time.
Also,
Preparation, sir.
while most of you are aware of the Chinese organization, etc., but you must understand that it has undergone change.
Yes.
So earlier, what we are referring to here as armies are actually corps, right? The size was something, three divisions used to consider as one army. So uh, that has undergone change. Now it is called combined corps, and so now the Chinese, after 79 and maybe another 10 years down the line, started thinking of changing to informationized war, then net centric warfare, and finally to a theater command uh,
Ac-
warfare.
Actually, it was during U.S. attack on Iraq and before that Kosovo
Yeah,
that the Chinese got a serious jolt that where the warfare has gone, and then they have carried out these. That is
yeah.
for okay. Chinese preparations, two type of preparation, military and political. Military, they did carry it out in 78. Little bit of combat training and exercises, some recruit training. Let's not forget that lot of Chinese troops were conscripts who were just because of political work they were brought in. Very few units were able to carry out meaningful tactical training or exercise at regimental and division level. Most of it was on basic soldier skills. However, some literature says that 60 to 70% of the time was spent on political training. Emphasis was on indoctrination to raise morale because Mao's dictum was men over weapon. He thought that manpower was more important, weapon was not important. So, because of that, they spent 60 to 70% of the time which was available on political training, and propaganda was said. Each Chinese soldier was so confident because of the propaganda that they thought that our central leadership decision for war was absolute necessary and just. That's why Vietnamese soldiers have said that as far as morale of the Chinese troops was concerned, it didn't seem that they were conscripts or they have just joined the army because of the serious indoctrination propaganda that was carried out during this time from 78 to actual launch of operations. Briefly enumerate lessons learned by China for its experience of the 1979 Vietnam War. Very quickly, divided into three parts. Experiences, there were faulty assessments. They underestimated the Vietnamese fighting abilities. Geography and terrain was not studied properly. They did not have updated maps. Neither they had geographical information, nor they had ability to carry out op recce. There was Chinese military failed to consider the huge quantity of militia forces. So these were all faulty assessments. Leadership, the leadership at ground level, they were not confident of taking decisions. Now this is one problem of authoritarian regime. Everybody thinks and looks above his shoulder for the higher up to give the decisions. So where the junior leader should have taken the decision, they kept on waiting for directions from top. Air and naval forces were not used. And it was very surprising that Navy and Air Force were not even considered, though allotment was made. But the military commander did not consider it important to employ these two important services during the war. As far as combat experience is concerned, starting from 1921, when PLA was formed, till date, the PLA leaders had never ever gone in for a combat arm, that is, all elements, that infantry, armored, artillery, going in for a war together. They had never done it because they never felt the need. It was more artillery used to pound and the infantry used to go and do the rush drill and carry out this thing, uh, prevent counterattack. Logistic was a big issue because Chinese did not have weather also played because it rained very heavily. In fact, they say that essential rations and ammunition, they had to take donkeys and mules to carry these ammunition because the slush, the roads were so bad that the Chinese logistic could not reach its intended place. Moreover, moment they were going ahead, the guerrillas used to come and attack and destroy some bridge in the thing. So the two forces, instead of isolating the Vietnamese, the PLA themselves were getting isolated. So these were the weaknesses under these three heads our students can remember.
Brigadier Bhatia, now go straight to the personality, because that
I do
these
this.
questions
Right.
we have also covered in our past discussion. So let's go
Absolutely.
to the personality question of Jung Jiap. So that will,
Wait with us.
right?
Sir, very quickly, terrain analysis, these maps are there. A very detailed terrain analysis has been carried out. I will suggest students, if not a question, just to understand the operations both from the offensive and the defender point of view. Terrain is very important to understand. Sir, I have tackled only one question, that is 10 marks question here because we were running short of time. Jap strategy was borrowed from the Chinese so-called three-stage strategy. Explain. Again, a figure. Jap's three-stage strategy was resistance, general offensive, and general uprising, which basically meant, or Chinese called it, strategic defense, guerrilla warfare, and counteroffensive. These specifically meant that guerrilla activities is in a revolutionary context. You carry out a guerrilla activity like the Vietnamese did. They employed local militia to stop the initial wave of Chinese attack. In full scale war, it is guerrilla warfare, cutting off, like I have just explained, moment the PLA was advancing, cutting off the rear. Wherever they were stretching and developing a weakness, they were cutting that. And counter-offensive is the place where they say that in the culminating phase, general offensive using regular military units. So the concept of Mao of three strategy was beautifully converted into a strategy keeping the Vietnamese conditions in mind and perfected during the US offensive on the Vietnam.
So what you should realize here is that, you see, as far as China was concerned, it used or it considered guerrilla warfare as people's movement, as part of a revolution to bring down a government which is opposed to their ideas, etc., which Mao did. But here, China, after gaining independence, forgot or maybe chose to overlook the fact that guerrilla warfare is applicable in conventional war as equally as in a revolutionary context.
Yes.
So you will find that In 1945, in the Second World War, the British used guerrilla warfare to defeat Japan. You know, when they had the Chindits going behind the
Yeah.
Japanese lines in Myanmar,
Correct.
that time called Burma, along the Mandalay River, and disrupting the entire logistics and supply chain process of Japan, creating
Vulnerabilities.
setbacks to the Japanese army. Thereafter, a number of other wars were fought where guerrilla warfare tactics was used quite effectively. India used guerrilla warfare tactics in the 1971 war. The Pakistan tried to use a similar kind of, not really guerrilla, but with the Razakars, they tried to use unconventional method in a conventional setting. So these were things which Chinese really did not evolve. They have only evolved at a much later stage. Therefore, it is important for us to understand that no warfare goes out of practice.
Yes.
It is a situation which will dictate what kind of warfare you want to apply. If there is an asymmetric lineup, which means that one force is too powerful than the other one, you will find automatically the weaker force using guerrilla warfare. You take Russia,
Absolutely.
Ukraine, you take Israel, Hamas, so small team concepts, etc. Similar kind of a setting may be required for India if there is a future war with China, even if it is a conventional war. So these are lessons which we must take from these military history. That is why they are put up to you for study and for entrance examination, so that you are able to analyze military history from today's perspective. So you may get a question of lessons learned and their relevance in today's
Absolutely.
context. Please prepare, please think on those lines. We will try to, this is the last question,
हाँ सर
Bhagya.
हाँ सर हाँ जी
Yeah,
सर
so we can remove this slide,
सर
and
I
we will just give a final touches to today's discussion to say that it was a snapshot of a sample question paper which is there on your screens. As far as this particular episode is concerned, you can freeze it and note down these various questions. In fact, initially, Jan Bhatia went through those questions in the initial part of his discussions. The information about getting these notes is also there on the screen for you to get it from the clause. I would like to tell all of you that we will also be making uh, review notes of 1 week and 24 hours, so that you can, as the exams are getting closer, look at these subjects more frequently, more regularly, without losing the essence of the entire campaign and the personality which you are going to face. So these are the numbers on the screen which you can note it down for. I believe there was in between a wrong number which was posted of Brigadier Ahuja, that has been corrected. But there are other numbers also for you. In case if you do not get through one number, get it through the second number. Then there is an email which has been given on this. And then on the website, if you go, there is a procedure laid down from where you can demand your question paper. So the information is available at various places. You go to the clause website, you will find that. Please don't type clause merely clause when you are searching for the clause website, because there is another site which deals with clause nails, etc. So mostly that gets thrown up. So you have to type properly clause.in, then you will get the site of Center for Land Warfare Studies. And there, if you search the website, right on the front page you will find method and procedure to get your notes. As far as notes are concerned, we are also going to start a series, tackle a sample question paper for science and militech with General Shankar. So please watch out for that. And balance, we will be targeting current affairs, rest of the questions with Brigadier Bhatia, as and when we find time. But over a period of time, you will find that we will start tackling questions of current affairs also through a sample paper. beside making you go through various current affairs such as India-US relations or India-China relations, or for that matter, Russia-China relations impact on India. Such topics would be discussed which are relevant and which may be asked from you as far as current affairs paper is concerned. So be prepared for a very, very extensive, in detail discussions on how to write answers and share with you notes, share with you sample papers. I don't think in the past such effort has been made in so much of details. Please make the best benefit out of it. Remember, it's a competitive exam. Even one mark may take you out of the 225 vacancies which are there. It is not a pass and fail exam. I say again, it's not a pass and fail exam. It's like your IAS exam. It's like any entrance examination which are challenging, where one mark can make the difference between you going to Wellington and you not going to Wellington. Anything you want to add, Brigadier Bhatia? I'll
Sir,
invite you.
I would request the student officers to please make use of the comment section. In case there are few questions, they can put it in the comments, which will reach us. Either we will reply it in comments, or maybe in the next episode, or either here with you, sir, or in my own channel that is Brick Speak, we will answer those questions. In fact, I've been answering the questions in our channel that is Brick Speak, whichever
Yeah.
the student officers have asked.
Remember, a lot of effort is being made by us just to ensure that you people get the best benefit out of what all we have done. It's a simple one-way process. Whatever notes you are being charged for is simply the printing cost, etc. That also we get it done through our Delhi area printing press, so that the cost is less. We're not hiring any commercial outlets. So understand that any additional notes will be helpful to you. You go ahead with what the USI is doing, go ahead with what the other channels are doing. Subscribe to these channels, subscribe to Shankar's channel of Gunner Shot, subscribe to this channel, which is Center for Land Warfare Studies, which is dedicated for you. Others cover many other issues, but Center for Land Warfare will cover in detail issues related. We will tie up, we will collaborate with the others to ensure that you have in one place all these information so that you don't have to run around. Subscribe to this channel, give it, share it with your future aspirants who want to appear for the exam, because this will only add to their knowledge. This will only facilitate in the future their attempts for this entrance examination. So the story does not end just with you. The story will continue after you also. With that, thank you very much. Jai Hind. Have a nice good evening, and once again wish all of you best of lucks, and a lot of thanks to Brigadier Bhatia for having spared this time.
Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me. Thank you, sir. Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind.